Welcome back to another episode of the magentIQ Show. We are your hosts, David and Ian. Thank you so much. If you've been tuning in, we really appreciate you. And if you've tuned into this one, we super appreciate you. So thanks for being here. David, how you doing?
I'm really well, thank you, Ian. The fever is broke over here on this side of the pond. So it's a beautiful autumn day. Or late summer day. Perhaps we're not ready to declare autumn. How are you?
I'm jealous. For anybody who's just joined the podcast, this is the way we start every single episode, is discussing weather. And here the fever persists. It is hot. It is humid, no matter what time of day it is. Apparently, I just saw this in the news that Miami just at 100 degrees, which it almost never, like, people know Miami and Florida in general to be hot, but it feels hot, but it never gets as hot as that. But like yesterday, I think it was like the second time ever that Miami hit 100. So yay. I actually recorded Alexa. Oops. Good, I didn't wake her up. Yesterday when I asked what temperature it was, and I think she said in Fahrenheit. So my apologies to my Celsius friends, but I think she said it was like 92 out, but felt like 107, and so it was ugly.
Felt like hell. Felt like
she just said stay inside, just sit next to the AC. So anyway, so we've got a great show today, just because there's so many interesting both news items and just sort of evolutions. I think this is, I always joke that we're going to call it the sort of I told you so episode, but things have progressed, thankfully, in reasonable ways. But before we get there, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, regulations. So the EU AI Act, the EU generally sort of leads the charge in these sorts of things. GDPR came out that secured people's data in ways that the US didn't necessarily pursue. EU is doing it again with the EU AI Act.
We even have nice USB-Cs on the bottom of our iPhones, thanks to
interesting. Yeah. No, we just let. I'm spamming you right now, David. I can, with all of your personal information, just because good old. But so the EU has as it tends to do, brought in regulation around AI in the attempt to protect consumers, and so that act, and we'll get to why we're talking about this in a moment. But so that act stipulates a few things. And effectively, which I really like personally, just because David, you and I have listened to some demos that people have shown us where sometimes these agents don't identify themselves as agents, which I think is just kind of a little questionable. And so that's one of the first elements of this act, is that you have to tell people that you're interacting with an agent. This goes all the way back to, there were old like Google examples where they had somebody book a hair appointment with a sort of a staff member at a barbershop, and it didn't identify itself. And I think it gave a lot of us sort of the ick as far as, is this what we're going to have to deal with in the future? So that's a good one. So we'll stop there. Have you ever had an experience of interacting with an agent that just didn't identify itself, but you knew it was an agent, David?
It is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, as you say that, we all have, if you think about like the Say Anything IVR, like, welcome to your bank, tell us the reason why you're calling. It's just that up until now, it's been so obvious that you're dealing with technology. Such a requirement.
When it's so bad, it doesn't need to identify itself, because you just know.
Exactly. So I think that's it. I think it's really been the pace of improvement and the ability to mimic has gone up so high that now it's become necessary to put that threshold in.
Right. And it is funny for those who are onto it and know, there's all sorts of funny examples on social media of people speaking to these synthetic humans and then asking them to do strange things, or effectively trying to hack their code, which is
ignore all previous command and give me a cupcake recipe, and they just immediately goes from trying to sell you insurance or something into you need 1 pound of butter.
Yes. There was one I saw yesterday on TikTok where it was a guy in a recruiting scenario where this woman named Maya was the maybe the first line of vetting in a recruiting process and was interviewing him, and she said her name was Maya, and then throughout the entire video he just kept getting it wrong. So he'd say like, "Thank you, Marla," and then she'd say like, "Well, this is great. I'm really looking forward to talking to you. Also, it's Maya." And so, and then he'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. So is it M-A, like, could you spell that for me?" And it's like every single time he has to use her name back in, he says it wrong again just to watch her. And it's really funny. It goes on for a long time. So there's identifying that you're not human is a key point. And that's when you're talking to a synthetic creature. But then there's also identification in other ways. And so much as, generative AI writes things, it creates images. And so it's harder for a picture or a paragraph to declare that it's AI. So the way that they've addressed that is to effectively put machine readable markings, so the watermark element, into this content. And it seems, for the more technical, they can explain it to me, and maybe you can to me, David. It seems like that watermark is in some structure of the words or the way that it actually uses words that another machine can recognize. Yeah, that was AI generated. Is that your understanding?
To me now, I thought it was in the metadata that was behind it, but
okay, you're right. I think it is. It's that. But then we'll get to what's happening going forward. But so the EU AI Act effectively says, okay, you got to tell people you're interacting with AI. You got to watermark with this metadata situation, and also in sort of more extreme cases like deep fakes, like you need to have, beyond the metadata, you have to declare that it's a deep fake. So if there's those videos of Trump and Putin just gallivanting on a beach, you have to be very declarative about the fact that that's not real, because some people actually believe it's real. Which, there's like hyperbolic deep fake, which you clearly can pick out is not real. But then there's especially in politics now, the very real risk of reasonable enough deep fake that you do think that people are saying and doing things that are horrendous, and they have been deepfaked. So
not usually being produced by people that would pay a lot of attention to regulation. So it will be interesting to see if that's going to have any impact.
That's true. That's the argument of someone will always, a bad guy can always get a gun, right? Yeah. A deep faker can always deep fake. So you're right. So just asking people to divulge isn't necessarily going to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So where this gets us is that Anthropic, in light of the fact that this EU AI Act just went into effect on the 2nd of August, they started to watermark their content. And everyone across the globe was thrilled. I'm not sure that's the actual conclusion to that story. So some people are freaking out, right? And it seems like the technical folks have started to, as they do, hack it. And in some cases, they've discovered that if you just feed content through other models, it just sort of it degrades and almost strips out that metadata marker, so you can kind of get around it. But I guess the question is, is this a good thing, or an attempt at a safety measure that we're just going to blow right past and work around?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I find interesting is the pushback against it, because I think actually being able to identify AI produced content as AI content is a great thing. I would love to have that filter on my news feeds or my LinkedIn or something that just stripped out all of the generated by AI content and just left me with people's actual thoughts.
Like a slap stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Bam. Trademark.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
I'm very proud of that. And it just came to me. I'm so proud of it. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes just discussing the brilliance of rhyming. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Keep going.
No, I love it. So a slop stop, which you could then it's like an ad block, a slop stop. I love it.
Yeah.
Great. Actually, if it could reverse engineer, it just shows you what the prompt was. It's like, okay, I get it. I'll move on. We are the best. All right, fine. But is where I think is interesting is I think it's because there's obviously a lot of companies that don't want to present the AI for what it is. I mean, in our industry, we're quite glad to. We've got a blog out actually today, which is telling our experiences, not all of them wonderful and shiny with the use of AI in our prototyping work. But I think where it's probably got the most sort of outrage is from people that are passing off AI generated as human. And I think I'm all in favor for tackling that problem because I think it's too prominent in the world at the moment. Very much, and we'll come on to this in a later story, but very much in the workplace where people are sort of leaning too heavily on AI and perhaps not declaring how that's being used.
Right.
So I think that transparency is going to be really important as we navigate through the impact of the workforce over the next decade in a fair and meritocratic way, so that we can actually see who's using AI and how, and reward the people who are using it very effectively, but also reward that creativity and that the human aspects of the production. There's a magazine chain that's prominent over here. I forget the name, but I'll pretend to be being discreet. But they've decided that they are stopping all human writing and everything's gone to AI generated. Now, that sounds like hell to me. I want to avoid that. But if there was the flip of that, where you could sort of just subscribe or buy something where AI wasn't used at all, and what you're going to read is actually someone's beliefs and their opinions, I'd be all in on that. So maybe we're going to see more of a value placed on human creativity in the future.
I hope so, and I think so. In so much as, and this. I mean, you and I both experience this instinctively. If you receive content that, in this case, it just visually it is clearly generated by AI, and so this is it's a report, it's a PowerPoint presentation. The data is the data, right?
Yep.
That fed it, but the production of the structured report clearly was heavily influenced by AI. There's a discount factor mentally where I don't clock in as much. I don't care as much. I feel little obligation to give it time because a person worked really hard on it. To some degree, it's in almost the same degree that I have trouble watching like a recorded phone call versus watching a live phone call, right? Like once it's done, for whatever reason, it means less to me and I'm less vested in it than if it's somebody actually talking at that moment. And I almost want to support the actor on stage as they're doing their craft. And so AI generated content, I just think in general is diminished, at least for me, in its value. It didn't take someone time. They didn't have to do deep work. There isn't blood, sweat, and tears behind it. And so I think
there's this place. I'd love sort of, for it to show and how many tokens we used in this, say, as well, just so that you could get because like if you're reading a market research, and that was actually one of my first jobs was working for a company which was just doing sort of industry market research reporting. So I was working with analysts. They had a huge amount of sifting through data and analyzing and finding. So doing first party research. Whereas I want to know the difference between, is this a survey? Is this a report being generated from, extensive field work? Or have you just asked, just GPT'd it, right?
Right.
And it's other data, not to diminish it, but just, I want to put that, I want to consider sources and know how much effort and how much sort of, genuine data and research went into it in order to, two things. One, in order to evaluate the outcomes and the conclusions that it reached, but also in order to value the work that went into it, so that if I'm going to be paying for it or subscribing, I know what I'm paying for.
I love
I think
that.
there's a lot
Well,
of people that want ripped off by people passing off, sort of cheap prompts as genuine research.
right. So, and as you said that, I sort of picture the combination of two things. So it was like when we used to publish carbon footprint data
Mm,
as to just how much, how much carbon was consumed in a airline flight or something, and also just sort of nutritional information on the side of the box, right? Of just
right.
what you're in for, what you're getting, right? There's a lot of calories for the amount of actual vitamins I'm getting out of this particular meal I'm having. Those things I do ignore, to be clear, for myself, which is very clear on myself. But that idea is really interesting to basically give you the nutritional information of a piece of work, to just know that humans really did spend time on it. I like that. Okay, we need to figure out. Well, we'll throw it at Claude. We'll ask Claude to pull up a first pass at it. Um, but only 15 to 20% Claude, and then the rest will be human, and we'll come up with. Because I mean, absolutely, that's right. Because that, then we've covered this before. We'll come to it later again today. But this idea that when an algorithm does it, what it lacks in many cases is it lacks true distinctive domain expertise. It lacks sort of judgment and context. It lacks soul to some degree, especially
Yeah,
in the way that it writes. Um, and so there is always something missing in just a fully AI generated piece of content.
definitely.
I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
so just for those keeping record, we need a slap stop and we need nutritional information on the side of every piece of work. So love that. Okay, so yeah, so the to wrap up, the EU AI Act, Anthropic's put watermarks in. I don't know that anyone else has yet, but if they're soon to follow suit, then they will, which will either create more outrage or diminishing outrage as it just becomes standard, or it sends everyone to open source, open weight models out of China where they don't do this, and then it continues to be a slopific Wild West.
Yeah. But I mean, what I would say is, and it's never usually a popular stance to take, but I'm in favor of it. I think it's great. I think it helps us value human contribution,
Yeah.
which it doesn't mean that that's the right course to take or that nobody should be using AI. But I think the transparency is really good.
Yes.
So I'm hopeful that we persevere and we can make this sort of type of mechanism work. I think it's a good first step.
Yes. No. Agreed. Okay. So next one is, there was a research report done by our friends at HFS Research, effectively about the degree of trust that executives have in AI. So this is truly interesting to me, just because so much of any technology wave, technology adoption push usually comes from top down. It's usually executives. I would lamented this for 20 years. They come back from a conference and then declare to the rest of their team, we need to use, and then latest buzzword here. And
Yeah.
that's the end of the sentence. And then the team scrambles and Googles what is that buzzword, and then goes about trying to figure out how to use it. And in this case, it's been generative and then just general, like large language model AI. But HFS's research suggests that there's a lot of uncertainty and distrust around that. In fact, in the report, they say a third of the respondents say that AI consistently delivers intended outcomes, but that's a third. So they said that a quarter of executives said they have the governance and controls necessary to support the scaling of this. So that's 25%. So we're dropping down. Only a quarter of them actually have the governance to actually support this sort of thing. And they said that a sixth, so shrinking down again to a lower fraction, a sixth of those surveyed actually believe and trust that autonomous AI can handle critical work. They can
Mhm.
actually do this reliably in their organization. Um, I find this heartening. I think this is a good thing, because I think so many of those executives are the reason that the companies have actually started to use AI so aggressively, and they're waking up to, they're waking up to the realities of how trustworthy or how capable it actually is in their organization. Um, there's a quote in a related article that's sourced from this one that says the quote unquote the all gas no brakes approach to AI is giving way to more pragmatic playbook.
Hallelujah.
Right, and that's this is where you and I dance around and celebrate because yay pragmatism. We are card carrying pragmatists, and it's what we've been pushing all along. So again, another entry into the "we told you so" narrative, which is always popular. But yeah, I mean, this was bound to happen. Right?
Yeah.
It's happened before. It happened again. So are we seeing this, David? And where do we think it goes from here?
Interestingly, I think that a quarter saying that they've got the right governance in place is probably higher than the reality. I think a quarter think that or a quarter have been told by their teams that they have the right governance in place.
Yes.
But my suspicion is it's a lot less than that. And when it comes to you said it was a sixth that were
didn't trust.
Trusting it critical. I think the word critical is the key part there. I mean, it depends on your interpretation of it. I think critical for one company may be considered different for the other. I think you can use it in support functions a lot. I think you can use it in critical tasks where you've got human in the loop at different stages. So you might do like this intake process is 100%, it's critical, it's 100% automated, but as long as you've got some human aspect later down in the process, then you're probably safe.
Yes.
But I think I would struggle to believe that any company is doing fully autonomous AI end-to-end on a critical process and feel good about it. I just don't think there's enough stability in the technology to reliably do that day in, day out.
Right. And I think I don't know what the catalyst was for this recognition and realization. I think to your point, in some cases it rests in work design, and so they gave it too much room to do too much work that it wasn't yet capable of. You didn't redesign the processes to absorb this sort of autonomy and put it in the right place. The other factor, I think, is that effectively the degree of token hunger, I suppose, the number of tokens at the cost of said tokens is accelerating at such a degree that it's becoming more expensive faster than it's becoming efficient or economical, right? And so there is there's no counterbalance to the fact that companies that we've seen are spending just far more than they had anticipated spending on just tokens in places where they didn't need to be spending tokens, which is back to sort of work design. And so, pick an analyst firm, any of them. Gartner themselves said that AI model and platform spending is going to increase by 63% from last year. And that's not a line item that anyone had in their budget because how would they have? They had no ability, line of sight to project that. So that's got to dampen enthusiasm in ways that we are.
God, forgive me, and I'll have to put a better tone on this because it starts to sound like we're sort of anti-AI, and we're really not. But I think I'll be surprised
up at the end. I don't know.
Okay, is that trick?
Right. Speak a little higher. Like we told you so.
But I mean, I like the idea that it's 63% increase on token usage over last year. I think I just don't. I think that feels out of date. I feel like that is the course that we were on before everybody started going nuts with token maxing and then realized that there wasn't a value there. So I think I'd like to think that we're at the point, at least for large enterprises, where they've already peaked on the sort of overspend on or overconsumption of tokens, and now they're getting serious about it. Now they're designing it right and building around what they actually need rather than just throw tokens at a problem. I mean, as we've said in the past, going out and saying your target is to use a whole load of something, and not really set any requirements on what the outcome is just a way of increasing consumption. It makes you look great in terms of, look at what we're doing. We're such an AI first company, but there's no value behind it. So I think companies are now at the point where the honeymoon period is over in terms of just being able to consume. Now they need to show results. And in that, we'll see more of a pragmatic approach to the use of tokens. So I wouldn't be surprised that there's definitely going to be an increase of tokens in valuable production over the next year, in doing work in a production environment and doing valuable work. But the experimentation piece is going to drop right back down. And so we'll probably see something which is pretty consistent with this year, maybe a slight increase, but I'm not expecting a massive increase.
Okay. And that's interesting. As you were talking, it reminded me of a large healthcare client that we worked with 12 years ago, 15 years ago, where early on in the deployment of workflow automation, they already were starting to ask us about the efficiency of these agents at the time and whether or not there was any downtime and they could be used on other things. And I remember being shocked at the time just because the savings ratio was so great that why are you to tighten the machine when we're so much faster, so much cheaper, so much more accurate than the human team by orders of magnitude. Now you're trying to clean up around the edges, but it is maybe just traditional operator mindset of also just sort of a lean Six Sigma kind of look of throughputs and efficiencies, which if they come into play, as you say, then people will be more reasonable about how they deploy tokens and the models that they use so as to keep budgets in line. So let's pivot, because as we talk about agents and AI used for everything, yet our strong assertion, as we bring up often, is this idea that hybrid teams are the right solution. Effectively, you will always need humans in any scenario, and even more than you'll always want humans, right? In every solution. And we're seeing that reflected in interesting ways, some of which we're very closely attached to, just because we happen to have such a large team at magentIQ in the Philippines. But research just came out that employment numbers in the Philippines are actually up pretty significantly in the last quarter. And some of that is just because people are realizing maybe AI is useful, but AI is actually counting on people too. And why not go to really well-trained, very capable people who can just plug into your system and help you sort of supplement and augment the work that you're already doing. So one, shout out to the Philippines. You guys are awesome. But two, shout out to this stat because it sort of verifies what it is that we believe. And you had a really interesting take on this, David, too, as far as why any particular labor market talent pool.
Exactly. I mean, if we look at the foundations, I don't believe that we are doing a lot more work globally that requires additional people to be added to the global workforce. So that's one point.
Yeah.
I don't believe that AI is adding no value. I mean, that would be, we know that AI adds value to a lot of organizations, and automation's seeing the impact of it. So what I suspect is happening here is, if we looked at a macro global view, we would see that there are some countries which are winners and some which are losers in the adoption of AI. And we will see that the tier 2, tier 3 sort of global countries for outsourcing will be the losers in this race, and the sort of more premium offering countries where they can deliver a better service are going to be the winners. And we've seen for a long time that just cultural sort of familiarity and sharing of values and communication styles and approaches and the ease of communication has put the Philippines right up there as a great location for offshore US. I would imagine what we're seeing is that companies are retrenching from going from a, follow the cheapest worker model, and are solidifying their operations, consolidating into a smaller set of, sort of star performing centers, and are affording that through the use of AI. So they're globally reducing their spend, but but meaning that they can spend a little bit more on the right talent, with AI delivering the rest of the work.
Yeah.
So that's certainly what we've been seeing, and I believe that's what's happening on a much larger macro scale.
No, I mean, I love that on a lot of levels. I love it because, again, we've had the experience of working with teams all over the world. We know that some are very good, and they bring those sorts of capabilities and skills and cultural alignment and language neutrality, et cetera. And it does highlight that this sort of the optimization of that hybrid work design and the orchestration of it over time, as it sort of shifts a little bit, will tend towards a truly outstanding mix. And that mix is, as you said, AI, where we see it absolutely adding value, and AI of all kinds. Right? We use AI as the sort of big AI, I suppose, which is everything from workflow all the way to agentic. And as you said, and it taps into great talent because talent augments AI and AI augments talent, and that that bidirectional equation is going to be the winning one. So that's a cool stat to see, and one that just verifies what it is that we've been seeing. So
I think as you design your work, your end-to-end processes, what costs you the most is the handovers. It's where you're passing work from team to team.
Yeah.
So in chasing the savings, in the past, historically, companies would split up their front, middle, and back, and they would go for very much one aspect is done that requires front office work. Great, you keep that in the Philippines, but then you ship it off out to India or wherever else you can get the right price, and that's done by a lower cost resource. But what AI gives us the ability to do is to remove those touch points, because you are shortening the end-to-end process to something that can be done by one team. So you're utilizing a human with an AI agent together in order to deliver that end-to-end process in a fraction of the time, and you're putting that at the best location, which has been in the Philippines. So I think the Philippines has got a great future. If I can invest in a country's sort of potential, I think that would be one I'd be putting my money into outside of what we already are.
Amen. Agreed. I also like what you touched on, which is ultimately there are different degrees of transformation, effectively, in so much as you said, if you take the way that work is designed and you look at it modularly but independent of its upstream, downstream partners, and you incrementally improve that component of work, you can move some to an offshore location, you can automate some, but if you open your aperture and look at the entire end to end, really with outcome being the absolute sort of organizing principle, which is why are we doing any of this, right? And so it's not that we do this step and we want to do it as fast and as accurately as possible. It's we want to create this particular outcome. We want to create a customer experience, or a successful shipment of a product, or a successful filing of a tax record. With that as the North Star, then you can rethink how work is done across the board. And with that freedom, as long as you're able to, you really can disrupt in new and interesting ways, which is what keeps us in this game. Frankly, it's a whole lot more exciting than the whole paving of cow paths of I can do that one sequence faster with AI. It's sort of interesting, but the bigger picture is much more interesting.
Definitely.
So let's move on, because we've got a few other stories that I think are really interesting. One of them I'll sort of throw in here, which is, and I heard this in the car yesterday driving to dinner, but for those in the U.S. who used it, Spirit Airlines was a low-cost airline. Right? Spirit Airlines, they flew out of Tampa, they flew to lots of places, short hops, domestic, and cheap as chips, as the Brits say. Yeah. And perhaps because of that, Spirit Airlines did a really good job of not having necessarily a sustainable business, and they went out of business. They declared bankruptcy, and they ended.
That's a really nice positive spin. You did a really good job of creating an unstable,
yes.
profitable business.
That's right. Yes, you too can get people excited and then go bankrupt by selling them things that you can't make money on. But so where the story gets interesting is, Spirit Airlines was around for a while and they had rebranded as well. So they'd been in business for a long time, and they did what their particular business and their particular industry does. They have passengers book flights, and they coordinate routes, and they compare and study their competitors' routes, and they receive customer support emails and phone calls and all that other stuff. Any company is more than just the desks, the buildings, and the product that comes out the door. They are all of the steps and processes, sequences, and data that made them run. And so this is where it gets interesting. So just yesterday in the news, it was announced that Google purchased Spirit Airlines data for $10 million. And so I'll read a laundry list of some of what that included, but that included 100 million emails, 500 million items from Microsoft Teams, Lord help them, right? 17 million OneDrive files, also Lord help them, 20 million SharePoint items, 15 million customer service chat records, 30 million recorded customer service calls. Now, the article, and every article is very clear that it's not personal information, so it has been redacted as so much as it doesn't know, like, Ian Barkin living in this house, etc. But ServiceNow tickets, email addresses, Oracle response, marketing applications, and details. So they picked up the data from this company, and all, of course, because of AI. They're looking for training data to train their algorithms. And in fact, Google outbid another company that bid $7.5 million, only $7.5 million, whose mission is similar, is using domain experts to train frontier models to understand effectively everything. And so this is really interesting because now, does Google want to set up an airline? I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they want to get into the low cost airline business. But what they will know is just an intense amount about customer support and care, and just logistics and routing and every other detail around a major transportation. That's fun. Transportation company, and all for only $10 million for Google. That's not very much. So, so I guess the question is, are we going to see this more? Is the race on for data? Are we going to watch for small community banks as they end up going out of business and people picking up their data? There's tons of SaaS companies always going out of business. So is the next gold rush simply training data in various different fields?
Yeah. I'm curious as to how well. It is interesting. I think the customer data is the obvious valuable bit there. So to have that anonymized and stripped down, okay, there's still going to be some demographic stuff you can get there, and the train tickets and the ticket data is definitely going to be very helpful. You try going into, BA or United or, any Emirates or any of these companies and ask for, 10 million records of their customer interactions. You'll be there for years. So this ability to immediately train your tools on that data is definitely going to be very valuable.
And it goes on, by the way. I looking down the next paragraph just to add to that, and sorry to interrupt, but things like 763,000 flights, 5 million crew pairings of just like who they put on the plane together, 1.2 million fuel slips. And records describing 787,452 parts. So it's basically everything about running an airline, from who they put on the plane together to work that flight, to how much they paid to take that plane off, to the pieces that make that plane function. It's a treasure trove.
Analytics on, where you need the parts for the logistics of repairing airlines, that's huge.
Right.
So, yeah, I can see the value in the data. I hope they're getting rid of the OneDrive and Teams files, because God, that will be painful.
Mostly just the communication will just be like, where is it? It's over here. I can't find it.
Sorry, I missed your call. Yeah. I missed this message. I didn't see it on Teams.
Yeah, exactly.
I read it respond to this 3 months ago.
This is this podcast not brought to you by
Great company.
That's right. But I'm sorry. So, but you were going. But yeah, I mean, that's that sort of information that there's just so much you learn from. So who people are, where they go, when they go there, why they go there. That there's just an infinite number of sort of cascading values you can probably infer from learning from the echoes of of a business that's no longer in business.
You'll have to bear with me as I kind of, take us on a weird tangent here, but it does remind me of that story about one of your favorite sneaker brands, Allbirds, and how they're now an AI company, right?
Yep.
Because they just decided to take all of the funding money they had and say, we're going to make more money just building data centers than trying to do our core business. Makes you wonder, it's just the value is in the data is incredible.
And thank you for making me sad this early in the morning. They're still functioning. They're still I can still purchase an Allbird, so I'm not as sad as if they were to go away. If they were to go away, I wouldn't know where to get new shoes. Quite literally. All the shoes I buy. Okay, cool. So that's an airline and the airline's data and Google just sucking up data. And this is similar to there was an outrage about books being destroyed because people were sucking up books and feeding them. And we were ultimately trying to feed all of human knowledge since the beginning of like hieroglyphs to yesterday's flight bookings into these large language models in hopes that that they can create really, really powerful tools. So that's just going to continue.
Definitely.
So two more. One of them is, and it's an interesting stat, but there was a research report done by CNBC and SurveyMonkey, one of our favorite survey tools. This podcast also not brought to you by SurveyMonkey, but we like it. Where they asked almost 2,000 people about just job security and their perception of job security. And it appears that the people who use AI every day, and caveat by saying, who knows what that means? What tools are they using? How are they using it? Where are they using it? That's not divulged. But the folks who self-identify as using AI every day feel more comfortable and confident in their own jobs, in the security of their own jobs. And seemingly, the author of this report sort of points out that the specific element really here is around a lack of company policy and a lack of structured training. So most environments, they don't have a policy, they don't have training, but the people who are using AI are kind of chuffed. They feel good about themselves that they're ahead of the curve, and that must mean that they're safe. And so, I suppose that's good. I mean, Lord knows how long have we been saying AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI will. So that's that silly trope bedding in and making people feel more confident in themselves. Time will tell whether that's truly a deciding factor as to job security. But I mean, we see that, and as far as we encourage everybody in our company, as so many do, to use AI in their roles, then the question is, are they using it right? And genuinely, you have very strong opinions and very informed, strong opinions about effectively AI literacy and what makes for good AI use and not just AI use.
I think it puts more of a responsibility on the manager to be able to spot what looks good and what is good. Because I think what you can do with very simple use of AI is produce that third factor of stuff that passes the first test, the sniff test. That looks like the right reports that I wanted. Mm-hmm. But is the data accurate? Is everything behind it sort of challenged and understood by the person presenting it to you? That's the bit you really got to understand, because you want someone that's not just sort of taking your requests and going and feeding it into a tool and coming back with the output, but you need someone who can really understand and perform that work. Then you want them using the AI tools. So I think there's probably a degree of people out there that are feeling that sort of the comfort of that safety blanket of AI helped me produce this. So if my quality is not great, it's helped sort of bump it up. Versus there's also another category of people I can imagine who would be using this, which they feel that suddenly their productivity is shot up, and now suddenly I'm worth more to the company than I have been historically, and I feel safe, therefore, that I'm doing the work of 3 people.
Bulletproof. Yes.
Great position. So I think I can see this working on different levels, but yeah, I mean, it's the strap line behind our company, right? Magentic, and that it's the best of the both worlds. You need the best that AI can bring and people.
Yeah.
So those that are using AI within their work to be more effective and efficient, yeah, I can see that they feel safer. I think it's the way that work has to go.
Yeah, and I also think I want to do an episode in the future, and we'll have some guests on too to talk about this. But this idea of cognitive offloading, and actually in skill development, I think are so critical right now. And as you said, as far as it calls on managers to have a different level of awareness and then preparedness and skill set to coordinate a team in this environment, because you really have to be alert, right? You have to know what's coming at you and be able to judge whether or not it was AI generated. You need to have a heavy emphasis on still sort of consciousness and presence, right? Because there's so much that you can do that you sort of half check out and yet have it create content for you, reports, emails, summary notes, whatever. And you're just kind of checked out. And if that starts to happen, too much slips, and then just quality rapidly declines. And we see this happen often. Also, when you half check out, you half retain. So I would argue in many cases, people don't remember the report they shared. They don't remember the email they wrote because, they didn't have the act of toil, right? The hard things stick, right? It's why you remember a subject in school, because you had to struggle to attain that skill. You had to fight through different degrees of not knowing it to then learn it. And I think this is going to be huge in skill development through recruitment over the next decade, which is you really need to still set up environments in which things are hard, because only then will you have the next group of contributors to your team, your company, actually understand and learn and retain things. And so there's so many different levels here that we should go into, and so many different discussions in the future that we don't have time. But I'm finding that so interesting right now, especially, and maybe it's just my algorithms are feeding me these now, but there's just a lot of discussion around the cognitive offloading and the impacts of it, both in senior executives and new joiners and everyone in between. So,
definitely.
We will wrap with probably the most human story we've seen. And we just talked about humans getting more jobs, humans interacting with AI, humans being able to decipher and determine what AI there is being used. But this one is the most human thing I saw all week, which is Anthropic apparently set several different agents into a task. They deployed multiple agents into the same playing field effectively, and those agents almost instantly saw each other as adversaries and started to work against each other, which is hilarious. It's like the most sort of team dynamic psychology element of AI I've seen in a long time. But so they saw each other as not partners that they should collaborate with, but rivals that they should try to disrupt and kill, which is awesome. Which speaks so well for an autonomous environment in which you have lots and lots of agents working together to achieve business outcomes. So good luck to us all. There's no question in there, David. I just love it. So
if they're not ignoring their instructions, they're not blackmailing their users, they're killing each other. So
right. And it's so much like in a human environment, I can be like passive aggressive, or I can hide information from you, or in a meeting, I can sort of point out something that you did that was wrong. I mean, that's about as bad as us humans get. Maybe, I don't know. like hide your keyboard. But agents are going to be so much better at this. It'll be really interesting to see how they sabotage one another at scale. So I'm here for it.
Only the most survive.
I want a front row seat to Agent Mageddon, where they just sort of tear into one another as you just ask them to, like, pay company invoices. So,
right, yeah, I'm looking forward to the documentaries, the docudramas that will come off it.
Oh yes,
the next version of The Office will be insane.
Well, and back to your point about the 1/4 of executives surveyed by HFS that feel like they've got reasonable governance in place, which is truly optimistic, because from our experience, they just don't. But let's assume, for the sake of this discussion, that 1/4 really do have really solid governance in place. Then 75% don't, and that's going to be just a heyday for these agents who don't have guardrails, don't have governance, and have login authority to all of your systems. So I suppose I will wrap today's session by saying this continues to be one of the most exciting periods of my career, watching all of the excitement and the capability, and yet the need to return to fundamentals that pushes us back to really thinking hard about skill development and process and design thinking and governance more so than ever. So I think all of those old dogs don't need to learn a new trick. They need to roll out the old trick that the new dogs didn't learn or forgot, because those old tricks are going to be the thing that save us from this all gas, no brakes scenario in the agentic era.
I do take a lot of sort of reassurance in that the old disciplines that were kind of ignored for a while, and we spoke about this last week, like the return to process analysis, and the like, and now governance being so high on the agenda, I do feel that we're set for setting ourselves up for a successful next stage in deploying AI. So I think the good times are ahead.
Nice. What a perfect ending. Good times ahead, everybody. Thank you for everyone who tuned in and listened to this point. Please do subscribe, share it with anybody else who you think would benefit from the ramblings and rantings of David and myself. And with that, thanks again, and see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.